Alright, welcome back. In the previous two part of lectures, we spent time to talk about how professional sports league has been organized in the U.S. and some of the policy has been introduced in the professional sports league in the U.S. So now we'll have like a quick lectures about how professional sports league has been organized outside of America. So I think you have the opportunity to read the textbooks. So the textbook they actually give you some idea. Hopefully, after reading the textbook, then this lecture will help you to understand a little bit more about European professional sports league. So to begin with, we're using one team as examples, right, to help you look at the structures. We're using Liverpool as examples. So Liverpool won the European Champions League last year. It's currently dominating in the English Premier League, right? So for the Liverpool Excel, how many different kind of competition does Liverpool have to compete in the whole entire season? If you're pretty familiar with European soccer, you know they're actually competing at a lot of different competitions, right? So they're competing at European Champions League, right? They're competing at English Premier League, right? They're competing at the Emery FA Cups, right? They're also competing at the league clubs. So they basically at least four different competition they're competing, right? Champions League, the National League, which is the Premier League, and they also have FA Cups and also League Cups. So all the different competitions that Liverpool team participate with, they actually are governed or owned by different organizations. So for European Champions League, it's actually developed and organized by UEFA, which is a European soccer federations. Right, Premier League is mainly overseen by FA, which is a football association. It's a national governing body for soccer in the England. Right, FA Cups is also the event that mainly overseen by the FA, right, Football Association, and the League Club is actually organized by the Premier League. So if you look at teams in Europe, so they have to compete at like more than one competition, four or five different competitions at seasons. But when you look at professional sports league in the U.S., so we basically only participate in one competition, which is the professional sports leagues, right? So only participate in the leagues, right? And MFL teams, they're only going to participate in one competition in the league. But professional sports in Europe, they have to participate in multiple different competitions during the entire seasons. And also multiple different competition, they actually being organized by different governing bodies, right? So they require all the different governing bodies need to collaborate it together to make sure the team is not going to play two different competition in one same days, right? So for professional sports league in Europe, particularly in soccer industries, so a team have a close connection with a lot of different governing bodies, including like national governing body like FA, like regional governing body like UEFA, and international federations like FIFA. So that's a little different compared to the professional sports league in the US. So you basically only have a very close connections with your own governing bodies. Like all the MFL teams have a connection with the MFL. You don't really have a very close connection with the USA football, which is the national governing bodies. Right, so that's something different. And also when we look at the current rankings, right? So English Premier League rankings. If you look at the English Premier League ranking, you find out 20 different teams. They're using different color to classify them, right? Anyone know why these four teams has been classified in the blue colors? It's because if the team stay with these rankings, they will be able to compete at the European Champions League, which is the competitions, we call them Super League, right? Which is the competitions participated by the club not just from England, but also from the entire Europe, the 55 countries in Europe, right? So why did they want to play at the European Champions League? Because Champions League you can get a lot of prize money if you win the titles. You can get the sponsorship revenue shillings just for participating in the games. Even though you're eliminated from the group stage, you can also receive pretty decent prize money. So that's why team invested significantly in order to finish in top 4 and being able to compete at the European Champions League. Right, you find out the team in the bottom 3, they also has been emphasized by using the red color. What does that mean? Which means if the 3 teams stay at the bottom 3 until the end of the seasons, they will get eliminated to the lower divisions. Right, so they will be eliminated to the division 2, which means they will have a less revenue they can generate it from broadcasting right, ticket revenues, right? They share much less revenues. So that's why they're using different color to emphasize here in this ranking. So compared to professional sports league in the US, professional sports league in Europe, they're using something called promotion and relegation systems. Right, when they're using promotion and relegation systems, so they're using open structure, which means the team 20 members every year. They have 20 members. The member will be changed. Where the team performed the worst will be delegated. So the member will be changed. Unlike professional sports league in the US, right, we're using closely structured. 32 teams remain the same. Right, openly structured. The members will be changes. Right, so that's a bit different using promotion and relegation. So we're going to talk a little bit about it later on when we try to compare professional sports league in the US and the Europes. Right, in terms of the memberships, we're using English Premier League as an example. The textbooks also you talking about English Premier League. The football leagues in the England were actually founded in 1888, featuring the professional sports clubs in England and Wales. In 1992, the new English Premier League was founded for the need of the restructuring. Right, so the AGM, which is annual general meetings, took place at the close of each sections, at which time the regulated team would transfer their shares to the clubs promoted to the English Premier League from the FLCs. Right, so unlike professionally in the US, we have a territory right. Professional sports team in Europe, they don't really have a territory rights. So the team don't really have a territory right, so they can promote anywhere they want. We're using example is London market. So if you had a chance to visit London, you find out, when the airplane was in London's skies, you find out there are so many soccer fields or rugby fields in London, right? In London itself, there are tons of the soccer clubs in London, right? You see, there's all the soccer clubs in London. How many of them are Premier League clubs? Right, so Chelsea's Premier League car, Arsenal's Premier League car, Tottenham's Premier League car, right? And also West Ham's also Premier League car, right? Charlton used to be a Premier League club, right? So there are more than 5 Premier League cars is actually playing in the London market, so they don't really have restrictions in terms of which territories you need to be in. So this is about English Premier League. As we look at the league structures, we talk about they have football premiums, right? There are 3 or 4 different professional soccer leagues existing in the UK. English Premier League has 20 teams. So below English Premier League is a football league, which has been divided into 3 different divisions with 24 teams each. For the team structure is also a little different compared to professional sports in the US. Professional sports team in US, for the young player, if they want to play in the professional sports league, a lot of time they're coming from college, they may come from high school. But if you look at the team structures in Europe, so each of the English Premier League teams, they all have at least satellite teams, right? So if you cannot be able to play at the team 1, you're also going to play at the satellite teams league, right? They also have under 21 teams. Majority of them have their own academy where they're gonna find out the young talent by themselves. So they also have the under 18 years old team, a different age group team. So they're going to find out the talents by themselves, they have a training facility provided to the young players. So maybe you are 6 years old, 7 years old, super talent, so you can go enjoy their academy, and then you can receive training from the teams, and you can grow from the team when you're pretty talents, right? 15, 16 years old, you super talents, you might be able to receive a contract from the professional sports team. So this is actually very different compared to professional sports in in the US. Or using example, Leo Messi. So he's from Argentina when he was 11 years old. So he showed his talents. So Barcelona actually invite Leo Messi and his father to Barcelona to their academy and help them to grow. And Leo Messi signed a contract with Barcelona when he was super young. Right when he was like 16, 15, 16 years old, he started playing professional sports league in Spain, in La Ligas, right? So that's really different compared to when we look at professional sports league model here in the U.S. All right, so majority of the professional sports in the U.S. you don't really have a academy where you can grow these players. Most of these young players are coming from the colleges, coming from high schools, coming from other clubs. Right. So some of the professional sports clubs in Europe's in English Premier League in particular, they also have a women's team as well. Right. So that's also kind of difference. So we'll give you brief introductions a little bit about how professional sports league in Europe has been organized. So from your perspective, what are the main differences between professional sports league in Europe and the professional sports league in the US in terms of the organizational structure and revenue generations? Any idea, any thoughts about this? Well, the main difference, as we talk about first thing, is openly and closely, right? Openly using promotion and relegation structures. When you're using an openly structure, which require you to have a multiple different leagues connected with each other, so having a multi-tier systems of the connected sports league, in which team are exchanged from one to another based on their performance. So there's some advantage, and they also have some issue associated with the open league structure. Right, one of the big advantage obviously is enhanced competition. They can reduce the league's minority power, and weaker team in the league also have the initiative to continue to compete and win the games. And also there's no salary caps, so team's performance really related to wealthy of the owner, so that could be issues, right? So one of the issue is risk is very high. You spend significant monies investing in players, but what if the team is not reached to what you expected? That might hurt the team significantly financially. So that is about openly and closely. So in terms of competitive balance rule, we talk about some professionally in US, we're using salary caps, we're using draftings, right? So both professionally in US and Europe using revenue sharings, right? They all share revenue. Broadcasting revenue has been shared equally, and also sponsorship revenue has been shared equally. Right, so one strategy has been utilized in Europe but has not been utilized in the US is they cap the foreign players. So in order to let more young local players be able to play in the professional sports league in their home country, so they have a restrictions in terms of how many foreign players each team can have. So that is something. So why do they have to cap the foreign players? Because in soccer, that's a very important competition called FIFA World Cups. So FIFA World Cups really depends on that's a competition between national teams. So national teams completely depends on your own talents, right? It's not dependent on how strong the foreign players plays, right? So in order to have a great success in the FIFA World Cups, so they introduced these restrict rules in terms of how many foreign players each team could have, right? So those are the differences in terms of structure and competitive balance rules. So one last topic we're going to talk about transfer policy and transfer rules in Europe. Right, professional teams are prohibited to conduct the purchase and sell the players. Professional sport teams are only allowed to conduct the purchase and sell the player during the winter and summer transfer windows, which means in other times you are not allowed to buying players, selling players. So summer windows normally is when the season is over. Majority of the European leagues, the season is over in the middles of June. So you basically starting from June and until August, and then you'll be able to sell players, and this is called summer transfer windows. It is open to all the professional sports league in Europe and not just one league, right? So the basic rule is the player, if you're under 18, you cannot transfer internationally, which means if you are a player from the United States, you super talent, 16, 17 years old, you want to play at the European professional sports league, you cannot transfer to play in the European professional sports league. So some people might ask a question, how come Leo Messi can play for Barcelona when he was only like 16 years old, 15 years old? Right, the reason is a lot of like North American country, those players, they have a dual citizenship. So they have citizenship from Spain, from Italy. So that's why they're able to play for the for the foreign clubs when they were super young. Okay. So the second thing, the transfer must be completed during the transfer windows. And the third thing, we talk about the captive foreign players. And also the last thing, which is also pretty unique, is the team allowed to loan this player to another teams. So it's possible that the team maybe spend a lot of money buying a lot of different players, but the only 11 players able to play, right? Some of the young talent players, and they are not be able to play because they're so young and they don't really have a lot of experiences in order to help this player to grow. And so professional teams is allowed to loan this player to another teams and play in the other teams. Right, so this is something kind of different when we look at the transfer policies in Europe. So one of the very important rules we're going to talk about to change the entire transfer policy in Europe is called Bosman rulings. So Bosman ruling has a huge impact on the freedom of movement for the players and the freedom of the association. So who's the Bosman? So Bosman was a really unknown players from Belgians. So he was playing for the D1 leagues. So it's in the 1990s, 1991. So he talked to his league and he talked to his clubs to see whether it's possible to renew the contract, but his club said no, we're not going to renew the contract with you. So he started to go and find out some other team whether he can play for next season. So he talked to one of the team in France, which is play in the second division, to ask them whether they can play for that club. So that the French team say, hey, yes, we would like to have you. So he decided to play for that club. So based on the old transfer rule, so the French team will have to pay the transfer fee to the Belgian teams, and then the Bosman can start playing for the French teams. However, the Belgian teams not happy with the money the French teams offering, and also they decided to say, hey, Bosman, you cannot play from them because we're not happy with the money they pay for buying you. So, and then Bosman basically lose his jobs after that. So he was really upset about it. So he decided to submit a lawsuit to the European Court of Justice. And the Bosman ruling was actually passed in 1995. So basically, Bosman won these lawsuits. So after this Bosman rulings was introduced to European market, so they basically changed the entire transfer policies, right? So these rulings basically indicate player can transfer to the different team after their contract expired without compensating his old clubs. So when this policy has been introduced in 1995, that has a huge impact to the entire soccer industry, the impact on the players, agents, clubs, and leagues. But one of the biggest impact for this ruling is they shift the power from the club to the players. In the past, right, clubs basically have the final say, hey, I want to renew the contract with you, and I want to sell you to different teams. And now the players basically have the power, right? Particularly when the player in their last year the contract with the clubs. If the players cannot reach agreement with the clubs, the player will become a free agent player, so like similar to free agent players, and they can join at the new clubs without compensating to his old club. So player currently basically have a great power during the entire negotiation process. And also after Bosman ruling, the transfer fee has also been increased significantly, where the study showed in the 6th season after Bosman's decision, the world record transfer fee was broken 8 times and moved from $20 million to $70 million. So you can see the transfer fee has also been increased significantly, and also players' agents' power has been increased significantly as well, because players' agents always going to place around among different teams to try to increase the salaries and the transfer fee for the players, right? So in order to protect the young talents from each of the professional sports league, so majority of the European leagues, they also introduced the quotas of the foreign players, right? Because the more players you'll be able to play for any teams you want, right? So in order to protect the young talent in their own markets, so a lot of professional sports league in Europe, they decided to introduce those quotas of the capping the foreign players to help their young player to grow, right? So this is about Bosman rulings. So the last topic, we're going to talk about the European Professional Sports League. So we're going to do a big comparisons between professional sports league in the US and Europe. So in terms of the competitive balance strategy, so in the professional sports league in the US, we're using salary cap, we're using draft, right? Professional sports league in Europe, right? The player transferred freely, right? Using promotion relegation, and they can cap the foreign players, right? When we look at the financial resources, right, so professional sports league in the U.S. generate revenue from broadcasting rights, from ticket sales of sponsorships. For the ticket sales, we introduced a lot of new concepts, introduced like luxury seats, introduced a personal seat license, PSLs, right, that's a new idea. For the professional sports league in Europe, they also selling generate revenue from selling the broadcasting rights, sponsorship, and ticket sales. At the same time, right, they also have the title sponsor. So all the professional sports league in Europe, they can sell the title sponsor for the league, right? For English Premier League, right, called Berkeley Band, English Premier League. So they can sell the title sponsor for the league. But professional sports league in the US, we don't normally sell the title sponsor for the leagues, right? They have a shirt sponsors as well. You can promote yourself on the jersey. Right, so in the US for many years, we don't normally sell shirt sponsors until NBA opened the door like 2 years ago. So now the NBA teams are able to sell shirt sponsors. So European Professional Sports League also generate revenue from the global broadcasting right. It's the same for American Professional Sports League, will also generate revenue from global broadcasting right. Right. League structures wise, US Professional Sports League using playoff systems. European Professional Sports League using football premiums, right? So multiple different professional league together connected with each others. And in terms of player association, majority of young players are developed from college and high school athletics, and European Professional Sports League are actually developed by themselves on their own academy, right? So those are the similarities and differences between professional sports league in US and Europe's. All right, any question, please feel free to email me. So the last part of today's class, we're going to talk a little bit about professional individual sports. Okay, we'll talk to you later.